In the Western world, we often forget about religions like Hinduism in the East, but the reality is that there are over 1 billion Hindus as of 2026. This number is quite shocking, and as Christians, it is a necessity that we proclaim the kingdom of Christ to these religious groups as well. And thus part of proclaiming the kingdom of Christ to Hindus is knowing what they believe, and where their religion makes serious errors. To be exact, we will look at the theological errors that the Hindu religion makes. For from these theological errors are spread many more errors in regards to morality and spirituality. As it is famously remarked, a small error in the beginning leads to a great error in the end. Therefore, let us briefly cover what the Hindu religion teaches concerning God and his relation to the world, and from this the errors shall become manifest. Hinduism's conception of God is called the Brahman, which is their idea of the ultimate reality which gives existence to everything. There are also other divine beings which depend on Brahman for existence, gods like the Brahma, and in some Hindu traditions, gods like Vishnu and Shiva, although some Hindus view Vishnu and Shiva as Brahman himself. And while we could focus on how there's no historical evidence for such lesser divine beings in history, or any miracle or prophetic claims as a kind of motive of credibility for the Hindu religion, today we will specifically focus on how the general conception of the Hindu god, or Brahman, is actually repugnant to the true nature of God. As a side note, if you want to support me, make sure to check out my store, which has various graphics related to Christ, St. Thomas, St. Augustine, and more. Thank you. For example, the Hindu philosopher Shankara argues for a teaching called Monism. This view essentially teaches that all of reality is one. There really is no such thing as manyness or distinctness or separateness. What this means is that Brahman, or the Hindu god, is not really distinct from the world, but is identical to it in some way. In fact, the Upanishads, which are part of the Hindu scripture, teach that our true self or soul, which is called our Atman, is really just the same as Brahman, who is the Hindu god or the ultimate reality of existence. As the scholar Dr. Peter Kreft explains it, the central affirmation of the Upanishads is Tattvam Asi. Thou, Atman, art that, Brahman. Through contemplative meditation, you find that in the depth of yourself, you are Atman, the single universal self or soul of which the ego is a mere appearance or localization, like sunlight reflected in a tiny broken piece of mirror. And this Atman is Brahman, the one divine mind in which all things and persons are ultimately only its thoughts. You discover your supreme identity only when you lose your separate identity. It is a syllogism. You are Atman, and Atman is Brahman. Therefore, you are Brahman. Fundamentally, this view leads to saying very destructive worldview claims. That is, I am not really distinct from Brahman or the Hindu god, and therefore I, in my own individual personhood, do not really exist. In fact, it would soon follow under this view of monism that all of reality doesn't exist, but just is the Hindu god. In fact, for many Hindus, this physical realm, or the created universe, is called all one Maya, or illusion in English. None of it really exists as distinct from Brahman. It essentially is a figment of Brahman's imagination. Of course, it is impossible, or reductio ad absurdum, to say that we are actually the Hindu god, or Brahman, for God is unchangeable or immutable by nature, but I with my intellect and will change, since it requires change in how I reason and arrive at conclusions with my intellect, and also when I go from a state of not choosing something to choosing something with my will. A Hindu might argue that this change is merely an illusion, for I would not actually exist, but am a figment in the mind of Brahman. But this claim is itself illusory, for it is self-evident that I exist and can exercise my free will. For if you deny that free will exists, then you'd have to say that you didn't actually reason to that conclusion, and thus you would never know if you chose the right option by your free will, since you were merely determined to do so in the mind of Brahman. This whole issue is solved within a proper view of God and creation, for God is clearly outside of the created world, and is not identical to it. God sustains creation by his omnipotence or power, but he does not make it one with himself, as a kind of pantheistic idea of God teaches. Besides this blatant error of monism that is prevalent in many Hindu circles, there's also the issue of religious pluralism that teaches that there are many paths to heaven, or liberation. This means that any religion can be a means of salvation or liberation within Hindu thought. This view comes out of the fact that Hinduism is not an orthodox religion, meaning there's no one way to follow it or be a Hindu. The issue with this view comes back to the true nature of God. For since God is truth itself, as even Hindus maintain, he cannot promulgate a religion which teaches false claims, since it is against his nature as truth itself. But under Hinduism, Brahman, or the Hindu god, does exactly this, and therefore Hinduism is contrary to the true nature of God. With all of this having been said, Hinduism is a religion which makes many theological errors, which produce many more grave errors. All of this is not even to mention the fact that there are really no major miracle claims that Hindus can apologetically use, since much of the Hindu religious history is just mythology at the very least, and just pure unevidenced claims at the very most. Even then, there are really no major reasons for others to convert to Hinduism, since even according to them, all religions are a path to the ultimate reality. Suffice it to say, Hinduism is a religion which contradicts itself and is an attack on the true nature of God. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and if you want to help support my work, consider sending in a donation through the links in the description below. As always, God bless.